All right, well, hello everyone. Welcome to your first breakout session workshop. My name is Brianna Weiss, and this is Alex Irby. We'll explain a little bit more of who we are, but we did want to take some time. I know we've got until 10:30 to start, so some people might trickle in, but we want to make sure you got a notes page. There's also some discussion questions, so we do want this to be interactive. We don't want to spend all the time just speaking to you, so we do want this to be interactive. If you didn't get a discussion question, that's okay. We'll just have you guys group up later and find somebody that has the questions, and so you guys can talk through those together. But yeah, thank you for being here. Again, this is Discipling the Church from Awareness to Action. So the description, let's see. Where's my mouse? There we go. Is participants will gain practical strategies and tools to guide churches in biblical formation, relationship building, and multiplication, equipping them to respond to issues in their community with long-term partnerships and meaningful impact. So if that sounds like something you were wanting to be a participant of, then great, you're in the right place. If you're looking for something else, maybe check the program, and we'll help you try to find that room. But yeah, our prayer is that this time would just be a kind of learning from one another. What we're going to present to you today is a tool that you see on your sheet there that we use at World Relief. This is not a foolproof model or strategy for doing the work that we do, that each of us do. But it's just a way of thinking, and we kind of want to use it as a conversation starter for how we all see our work and are working together with the church, partnering with the church to do the work that we are passionate about. So I would love for us to spend some time sharing about who we are. It's good to know who's in the room and who we're talking with and strategizing with. So if you want to just quickly share your name, maybe organization or church that you're with, and then let's maybe just stick to name and organization because we might not have enough time to go through also why you're interested in the workshop. So yeah, you want to start in the front? Yeah, for sure.
Hi, I'm Donna Renee Cumby, and I'm with Mission Waco Meyer Center.
Okay.
I'm Sue Ann Schnitger. I live here in Waco, and we go to Highland Baptist Church, just seniors who have time. That's why we're here.
I'm Libby Barnhill. I also work with Mission Waco, mobilizing groups of volunteers.
Paul Field, my wife Lee, we go to Church on the Bridge, and we work with the homeless and marginalized people.
Marguerite. Go to Church Under the Bridge.
Awesome.
I'm Dawn Kropp from First Baptist Temple.
I'm Roland Bumpus from First Baptist Temple.
I'm Abby Villagrana from First Baptist Church Temple. I'm the missions minister there.
My name is Julius Collins. I'm from Liberia. Methodist pastor. I work in Colorado, but I'm a student at Davis, so I have to be at this.
Good.
Awesome. Glad to have you. Hopefully we'll make it worth your while.
My name is Kayla, and I work at Mission Waco and attend Church on the Bridge.
I'm Lori Latimer. I'm involved with Mission Waco, and I go to First Presbyterian here in Waco.
I'm Ruthie. I work for Mission Waco in administration and also attend Church Under the Bridge.
I'm Maria Park. I go to Church Under the Bridge. And I'm Rhonda Jones. I go to First Woodway.
I'm Lynn Brooks, First Woodway Church.
I'm Karen Keeling, Renew Church Waco.
Janet Doyle, Church Under the Bridge.
Renee Maciel, mission pastor at First Woodway.
Warren Baker. I'm a member at Highland. I'm interning with Church Under the Bridge.
Sam Goff.
I'm Dale Peacock, and I'm a member here, and I'm with SIL.
Awesome. And our friend that just joined that's finding her seat, if you want to just share, we're just briefly sharing our name and what organization we're with or where you're coming from.
Okay. My name is LaQuinta Pollard. I am from Austin, Texas, and I am, well, give them my backpack.
Oh, you're totally fine.
Austin, in the athletics department, that's my mission field. But I'm a member of Thomas Lynn Church, and also I'm gonna represent.
Cool.
Great, love it. And And I know you just are coming in, but the lady in the gray, if you want to introduce yourself or share who you're coming from or with.
Yeah, I'm here in Waco with Renew Church. I work in youth ministry. This is my friend Karen, also from Renew. So it's
Cool.
Awesome. Great.
Abby Williams, yes, that's my name. So sorry.
Yeah, very fine, yeah. Well, thank y'all again.
Did anyone
see.
also not get to sign this? Okay. You're just wanting to know who was in the breakout.
Great. Well, we'll get started. Like I said, my name is Brianna Weiss. I have the privilege of serving as the Regional Director of Church and Community Engagement for World Relief Texas. And this is Alex.
I'm Alex Irby, and I work in our Dallas office, overseeing our church and community engagement in the Dallas office.
Yeah, and then Alex will kind of share a little bit about us, and then we'll kind of get into the workshop. So.
Good.
Yeah, we wanted to share just briefly about who World Relief is, just so you'll have our context as presenters, and then we'll kind of dive into the discipleship ecosystem. But World Relief, our mission is to globally engage the world's greatest crises in partnership with the church. We've been doing that for over 80 years. We started right at the end of World War II, helping war-torn cities. And then we went from there to just helping any really global displacement crises that are happening around the world. And then in 1979 is when our refugee resettlement program in the US started, and we've been helping welcome refugees and asylees here in our cities locally. And then a little bit about our work. So internationally, we're focused on mitigating reasons why people have to flee, or focusing on root causes of global displacement of people around the world. And then here in the US, we're focused on the effects of displacement. So people then have to flee. A lot of them are coming to the US, refugees, asylees, immigrants. And so we're helping them in that process as they're here, kind of readjusting their lives. We are one of 8 resettlement agencies that the US partners with. We have internationally, we're in 11 countries around the world, and then in the US we have 25 different offices. And yeah, that's a little bit about who we are.
Cool.
Any questions about World Relief or any of our work? And Alex mentioned we have U.S. offices, so we're representing World Relief Texas. So we have 3 offices in Texas. We have one in Fort Worth that was started in 1980. Our Dallas office that was started in March of 2023, and then our Austin office that started in September of 2023. Any questions about World Relief before we move on? Okay. Well, I would love to open up discussion from the group. So again, we said we were going to talk about strategy, and we're going to present a specific tool today. But I would just love to hear from you guys. I know a lot of you are coming from churches and other nonprofit work, and so I would love to hear what is maybe your church or organization's framework for engaging people to serve. Maybe there's a mission statement, maybe there's like the 3 words that you use. What is kind of the framework, if you have one, and that's okay if you don't have one, but maybe I would love to hear and learn from you guys. Is there any specific framework or strategy that you guys use in your work?
Well, we have 4 words that we push a lot: is abide, grow, reach, and serve. And so our pastors use that a lot throughout all of the sermons and the ministries and stuff that encourage people to reach out, in local community and beyond.
That's good. Yeah.
We are a part of the mobilization team at Mission Waco, and so actively trying to do this, get people involved in the work that our organization is doing to address poverty. And we use the language of equipping. We want to equip people with knowledge, but also compassion and understanding of the call of the Christian to engage in this way.
Anyone else?
Well, our church, our missions kind of have 3 key words: relational, impactful, and gospel driven. And those are kind of the 3 kind of core values we have. And there's that's kind of mutuality with the relationship, impact, that's not just doing something that's not needed, and gospel driven to make sure it's not just service project, but it's also, it's, you know, based in scripture, and there's that component as well.
That's good. Any other thoughts, ideas? Okay. Well, whether you have a 10-step process for mobilization, or if you've just got a mission statement and you're hoping it sticks, I hope that this conversation can kind of explore deeper, like what does it really look like to move people? And with the title is moving them from awareness, so coming to understand, maybe it's a specific cause, maybe it's just the Great Commission, maybe it's your specific ministry, but opening their minds and their worldview to an awareness of a certain thing, and then moving them to action. What does it look like to not just know that there is an issue, a root issue in our community or in our world, but how do we move the church to action, to taking practical steps? And so the model that we're going to present today is something called a community change ecosystem. And so this is something that we create at World Relief to really just kind of help us share what is our mission and what does our vision look like lived out. And so our vision at World Relief is we envision thriving, welcoming communities where families flourish and people experience restorative relationships with God, their neighbors, themselves, and all of creation. And so we want to see this accomplished in partnership with the church across the U.S. So again, this is what we're going to be presenting to you today is a reproducible discipleship process, moving people from kind of an awareness, specifically with us in the U.S., our U.S. work. It's people understanding who immigrants are in our communities, and then how do we move them from just an awareness of an issue or a need in our community to action and reproducible action, reproducible discipleship process for the local church. And so we want every church, every volunteer, every donor, every partner to go along this journey with us. And so I'm going to walk you through the 6 steps. You'll see on your sheet there that there's 6 different steps along this process. And on the back, there's just space for you to take notes. If there's something that really stands out to you, feel free to write that down. Or if you want to think through your own ministry, your own work, and think through what do we do. And I know in our discussion questions, we'll kind of talk through some of these ideas. But if you think of something of like, oh, I think we really do this well, jot that down, because I'd love for you guys to share that with each other of like, we do this thing in story really well, or we are really collaborative in the community and I would love to share that with someone else, or hey, I've never thought about like, how do we move people from experience to relationship, and I would like to think more on that. So feel free to jot down notes, and we'll kind of get to a good chance to talk together about some of these things. Let's see. Okay, so like I said, first is story, and so we'll walk through each step, and I'll kind of explain how we think through this discipleship process. So it all starts with story. This is the entry point, or what we also call the top of funnel, so moving people from a broad understanding into this discipleship process and pathway that they're going to move forward on. So story is what sensitizes others into a new way of thinking. Maybe it's about your work, maybe it's about a certain issue, maybe it's the people that you serve, and so it's kind of opening up their worldview. So think about the first time that you heard about the work of your organization, maybe the people that you serve. What was it that kind of opened your worldview? Maybe it was a statistic, maybe it was a story, maybe it was a person you got to meet. So what was it that really changed your perspective, and how can we tell that story to other people? So with our work at World Relief, our hope is to expose as many Christian leaders and lay people to messaging that's favorable about immigrants. I know many of you are familiar probably with the story of what's happening in immigration in our country, and just that it's very political and can be divisive, but we want to kind of expand that narrative, moving beyond policy to people, and helping people understand the immigrants and refugees that are living in their community, and connect a story and a face to your real community, and who's amongst you, who is your neighbor. And so that's kind of what we strive for in story. And that can be done through social media, that could be through blog posts, general media coverage. We get contacted a lot when there's something happening in the news about immigrants or refugees. And so any way that we can expand people's worldview through the messaging about immigrants, that's kind of what our work looks like. So what is yours? What is a story that moves people to compassion that you can share. And then next is teaching. So as people are made aware of your work, maybe your cause, the people that you serve, how can we move them from learning to further affirming that through biblical principles or just biblical ideas? How can we point to the heart of God in this issue? So what does the Bible have to say about this? What is the local church teaching about this? Sometimes it might be a blind spot for the local church. Maybe your pastor is teaching on this regularly. Maybe they're not. So how can you better equip pastors and other Christian leaders to biblically guide those that they are shepherding? Maybe it is just the Great Commission. Maybe it is helping. Maybe our church needs to be more missional. How are people being moved through the pulpit to be living missionally? And so at World Relief, we know and believe that the church is the best place for people to be discipled. So we want to help equip local church leaders and pastors to do this well. Okay, and then experience. What does experience look like? So after awareness has begun, after they've solidified their knowledge of and awareness of an issue, maybe they've done some Bible studies on it, maybe they've understood what God's heart is for the foreigner. For us at World Relief, how can we move them to action? So maybe there's a one-time event or experience that they can have that can provide context, moving away from just a story, but connecting that story to a real person that they've met. And at World Relief, we want this first experience to be low risk. We want it to be accessible to people. And by low risk accessible, it just means something that's short time commitment at first, that can kind of just dip their toe into what is it like to engage with an immigrant. So this isn't going to require extensive training. This isn't going to require extensive onboarding. And for us, that's a challenge sometimes. We are not experts at all of these steps at all times. And so sometimes it is challenging for us to say, okay, we have a local church group that has 50 people and they're trying to find a mission project. Well, how is it going to be helpful for us to mobilize 50 people quickly? That's also not going to disrupt the ministry that we're doing in an ongoing way. So this can be a challenge for us, but sometimes this looks like food distributions or donation distribution. Maybe this is a refugee loss simulation. I think we were talking about how you can have a loss simulation experience be something that's transformational for people to help them take a deeper step in engaging. And so thinking about what is something that can help people move from awareness to action. And it's just that first step of action. So what can this look like for churches and individuals in your ministry and in your work?
Can you go a little bit more about the simulation?
Yes, yeah, and what we do?
Yeah.
Yeah, so our refugee loss simulation that we conduct is about a 20 to 30 minute activity. So this is especially good for larger groups. We will come and, all it really is just a few pieces of paper. You just sit at tables or in rows, and we kind of walk people through what it's like to lose things along the journey that a refugee may go through. So if you're forced to flee your home, you may have to make the decision of, my husband's at work, do I take my kids and leave right now? What if my kid's at school? Do I go run to the school, knowing that could be where the danger of the war is breaking out or the conflict? So there's like family separation involved in that. There's the things that you take. Maybe you can only carry a backpack. So kind of going through that experience and seeing what it's like to, not to live through the war, because we can't obviously simulate that experience, but what is it like to have to make difficult decisions that impact the trauma that someone might be coming to the U.S. with along their journey?
Question?
Yeah, for sure.
I was just going to add that I've gone through the World Relief simulation.
Yeah.
And it was very, very powerful.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Yeah.
It changed the dynamic in the room, in the conversations. It helped transition it from those people to, oh wait, this happened to me.
Yeah.
Of course, it was a simulation, but people began to own the issue.
Yeah.
As their own. And I would also like to point out that Mission Waco, even though I'm not with them, have the poverty simulation. So
Yeah.
why don't you guys jump in and
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah,
your
yeah.
simulation?
Yeah, please share, yeah.
We have a weekend-long simulation that really is supposed to bring awareness to the experience of poverty and homelessness. And so you come in on a Friday night and you're given the personhood of someone experiencing poverty and resources associated with that. And then you go through a very normal weekend making decisions about very normal things, what to eat, where to sleep, what to do with your day. But the resources that you have impact the decisions that you make and that you're able to make. And so it's a really powerful experience just about how we view poverty in the United States, but also globally, how different places view poverty and increases compassion. So we have one coming up in a couple of weeks. If anyone wants to join, it's on our website.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think the key in both of the simulations is how are you making decisions that other people are having to make. It's easy for us to think, I wouldn't have maybe done it that way, or, you know, why do you have to come to the United States? Why couldn't you have gone somewhere else? Or, you know, why can't they just find a job? Or why can't they just, but when you're forced with your limited resources to experience that, that trauma, that frustration, that confusion, that helplessness, I think sometimes it's opening people's eyes to, oh wow, I have a different perspective. I have a heart of compassion now, a heart of understanding. And it's kind of, that first experience that can then say, okay, now the barriers are moved. I have this level of empathy now. I can step into deeper engagement.
Yeah.
It's really good. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
I just remember having an experience with a high school group that I chaperoned, where we went to a house to help a family, and we were talking about the poor, but the kids were busy, our kids were busy kind of cleaning out and doing all this stuff, but inside was somebody about their same age playing video games all day, who was a person who lived there. And it's like, why can't they be helping themselves? And it almost became a counterproductive experience for them. So I guess my caution is when you develop those programs, make sure you have good programs, or there's something positive.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and there's something, actually, we were going to include another framework that we use when we're developing experiences, especially when we're talking about this one-time experience. We want it to be impactful for the church. So something that's not just busy work, but something that's going to help the church walk away and be better disciples and better moving forward in whatever the Lord is calling them to in their work and their mission work. We want it to be a win for World Relief. So like we said, we don't want to spend 40 hours planning a 1-hour event if it's going to be a lot of work and not a great win for World Relief staff. We want it to be good for our clients. So we don't want to just bring 50 people in to do a cookout in the community, and then these are just people that are here for one weekend, and then we're like, oh, come out and meet all these great people. Maybe they're going to share the gospel with you, and then they're never going to see you again. And so we want it to be a win for our clients, so our program participants. And then we want it to be a win for the community too. So, sometimes the community is a hard one for us to think about, but how are we not just including the church in our work, but how are we making a greater impact on the broader community? So how are we working together with local nonprofits, or how is the broader community seeing the work that World Relief and the church are doing together, and they are learning about maybe what the local church is doing, or maybe they're saying, oh wow, I like the way that World Relief does apartment ministry, or they're collaborating with apartments, local government, different things like that. So we'll kind of get into that when we talk about collaboration too. But yeah, that's a really good perspective.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
One little bit of word of caution, if you do a refugee simulation, several years ago at our state meeting for Women's Missionary Union in Texas, we did that, and it was about an hour-long thing. We first did the paper, where they read things, and then they divided us up into groups, and along the way, we moved through the different stations that they deal with as a refugee, going into a refugee camp and all that kind of stuff. We had one woman who had come from Africa several years ago, and she lived that many years ago, but it brought back all those memories flooding into her, and it was really difficult. So it was kind of a, oh, didn't think about this, you know, how to help them. So to be prepared of reactions, for reactions.
Yeah, that's really good. We always have a kind of a cautionary statement before we start. If anyone's been through trauma, image trauma, or has been diagnosed with PTSD, we recommend either observing or maybe stepping out of the room for uncomfortability. But that is always something I always caution people before we engage the church group. We have the church leader just, hey, just so you know, there's going to be some sensitive topics. There's violence in the experience. There's loud noises. We simulate kind of like what it would be like to be in an anxious situation. And so, yeah, that's really good because there's people, you never know what people have experienced or what people have been through. And so, yeah, it's really good to be aware of that. And if you can't know that in advance, to bring that up before you do that. That's great, yeah. Great feedback, yeah.
Our lovely missions minister, I went on a women's build with the Women's Build of Texas, WMU, and she had us to read the book Welcoming the Stranger before we went. And it was like, okay, wow. It was very helpful to me.
Yeah, we actually have Welcoming the Stranger out on our table, so if you want to look at it, or we have like 1 or 2 copies, so maybe we can give you one if you're really interested. But yeah, it's a great book. I love the World Relief Connections. This is so awesome. Like, I love finding people that are familiar with the work. But yeah, it's a great resource for just understanding kind of the history of the immigration system in the U.S. and just how it's developed and been really broken at times and still is broken, but also like just God's heart for people on the move as well. So it's really great. Yeah, I love that. Any other things about experience or story or teaching?
I have one question. When those, especially given to the several examples that we heard, when those trauma responses come up, is the staff trained for like trauma-based responses to those individuals, especially given that we know mental health, that's a hot button topic that's been around forever. But what trainings are in place?
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I would say that we have trauma-based training for most of our program participants, but I would say that, that's maybe a weak area for us. Like, we're not probably like, a volunteer coordinator or on our CCE team specifically. That's a really good thing to keep in mind of like, as we're engaging the church, knowing that the people that are participating and engaging with people that have complex trauma, they might be also coming with their own trauma. So that's a really good idea and thought, and something that I think that we could grow in for sure. Does anybody, I don't know if anybody, there's a lot of great resources and groups that do trauma-based healing and training, if anyone wants to speak to that in this room. Maybe a plug for the later workshop. Yeah.
The Healing Institute out of the American Bible Society, they have really excellent training. It's intense. It's 4 days, but it's really excellent for any practitioners that are leading groups or just to have some ideas. And then within their programs, they encourage people that do those things to have psychologists or psychiatrists, in their pocket to be able to call immediately if something does go. Because even that's not enough for a lot of the trauma that does go through. But it's a beginning.
Yeah, for sure. And I think something we talk about in our work too is like secondhand trauma from like hearing, like even for me, like when I'm looking and seeing so much of what's going on in other countries where refugee clients are coming from, just the news can be like, I have like war dreams, and I'm like, why am I having dreams about bombs? And so I think it's just the secondhand trauma that we can have. And so I think it's always, especially as practitioners working amongst people with complex trauma, to be taking care of ourselves and making sure that we have resources for that as well. That's great. Yeah.
Acts of Mercy, which comes out of Antioch Movement, they also have trauma training for their team when they go to that.
Great resource. Thank you. All right, well, we'll keep moving. I want to make sure that you guys have time to discuss in your groups. Let's see. I'm like trying to, I'm like, where's my mouse on the other side? Okay, there we go. I think I found it. Okay. Let's see, moving along to relationship. And so once people have taken that first initial low risk step into a volunteer experience, we don't want them to just come experience one time and move on. We want them to be discipled to grow in their volunteer experience. So we always want a group or a volunteer to be presented with a next step opportunity, whether it's right there on the spot or in a follow-up communication. We want our church partnerships to be thinking not about one-time transactional opportunities. We want them to be thinking, how can I move people into deep relationships with refugees and immigrants in our community? We see that that's where life change happens, but that takes time and that takes investment. And so whether that's investing with our staff, working in our offices, getting to know our staff, getting to know their clients and the things they experience, or if that's being matched directly with a refugee for anywhere from 3 to 6 months, maybe a year, to really get to know them and walk alongside them. So we find that often life change happens when volunteers are, we kind of talked about it earlier, experiencing alongside refugees what they're going through in the U.S. How many of us struggle to navigate public transportation? I know I do. We live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We are not in a walkable city, and we are not in a city that has great transportation. So navigating what it looks like to not have a car is really challenging, especially when you have to figure out how to get to work. Figuring out how to get your Social Security card, I think that's something we rarely do, but sitting in a Social Security office and trying to figure out paperwork. So kind of walking through those challenges with someone in their first 6 months after arrival, and even their first 5 years of being in the U.S. can be really eye-opening, just to experience what are the systems that we take for granted every day, that we benefit from, but that someone who's navigating it for the first time might find challenging, in the midst of also trying to feed their kids, get them in school, making sure that they're successful, making sure that they have a job, and learning English and all those different things. But then also the benefit is for our program participants. They don't have just tangible needs, but they have relational needs. Finding a friend, finding a teacher, someone that can practice English with them, that can take them to the grocery store and teach them that the great value might be a better cost than spending on the more expensive brand. So just navigating things like that can help people build social relationships, meet their social needs, their spiritual needs, their psychological needs, but also their physical needs as well. So think about, how do we move people from that experience to rooting their volunteer experience in relationship? So moving from a one-time experience to a long-term relational commitment. Any thoughts on relationship?
And I think this is where, I think Julia said it well, where you also learn, you take that posture of learning from each other.
For sure.
It's not just a one-off thing, but it's a thing that you create together.
Yeah,
because you learn from the other two.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think so many of our volunteers have learned a lot about family values. Family values, have learned about work ethic, but also just culture, and I think especially when we're trying to share our faith too, learning about holidays from other religions and other cultures can be helpful for sharing your faith as well. Can I celebrate a holiday with you? Show me what that's like. Can I come over to your house? And then vice versa. I would love for you to celebrate Thanksgiving with me. And that's new for people. But what does it look like to kind of have that mutual learning, mutual sharing of culture, of relationships, of family? And that's where I think we can see also life change and mutual understanding happening through that. That's really good. Any other thoughts on relationship? Okay. And then next is multiplication. So as people experience what it's like to walk alongside refugees, or in your ministry walk alongside the people that you serve, how can we grow leaders into being multipliers? I think we talk about this a lot in missions work, disciple making movements, multiplication. But I think finding the leaders that are invested in your work and letting them be the heartbeat and the voice of your organization, telling the community, hey, this is the experience I had, and won't you come along with me? There's actually a Barna survey that says that pastors have identified one of their top needs is the need to develop leaders within their church. And I think oftentimes we don't want to burden people, and they're busy, they're a mom, they have so much going on, they are running errands, they have a job, but I don't want to ask them to take a step into leadership and leading in this ministry in this way within our church or within our organization. And I think that's a challenge for me too. We have some outstanding volunteers that I'm like, oh man, it would be so great if I could bring a new volunteer to walk alongside them. But I don't want to burden them with one more thing and one more opportunity. But I think just think creatively about how you can set up those relationships where volunteers can learn from one another. Seasoned ministry leaders can take other new people alongside them and mentor them. And I think this is where we really see multiplication, because these are the people that are invested. These are the people that have the stories to share, to bring more people into the work. And so think about who is it that you can give greater responsibility and ownership to. Yes.
Could you connect the Good Neighbor team, tell us more about that? And
yeah, for sure.
The role of that in multiplication?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so Good Neighbor team is, like I said, when you, it's a group of about 5 to 12 individuals that walk alongside a refugee or an immigrant in our community for their first 6 months being here. Now that we aren't welcoming a lot of new refugees, that could just still be walking alongside them for a long period of time, 6 months to a year. And what we've really seen work well, especially in multiplication, is how can we come to a leader at the end of that 6-month journey? We have 2 people that often lead those groups. It's either like a married couple or co-leads or something like that. And say, hey, who in your group do you think could start their own group within your church? Could go recruit 5 to 12 more people and break off and start a new group. I think we do this a lot in church ministry and with our discipleship groups or life groups. We do the same thing all the time. So in the same way, how are you identifying leaders within groups that can then create new groups to bring more volunteers into the work and expose more people to what you're doing? That's a really good point. Is there anything else that you were thinking on that?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the how-to.
Yeah, we've mostly seen it with really strong leaders that are then able to like call that out in other people. I think it's hard for us at times to always know. We have our volunteers report their volunteer hours, but it's hard for us to know who's really like from the group, who's really engaged and really excited about this until we get to that 6-month end of that commitment and say, hey, my group wasn't really engaged. I mean, we try to engage them throughout the time, but hey, this member wasn't really engaged, or hey, this person's a really great leader, and making sure that we ask the team leaders, hey, who in your group could start a new Good Neighbor team? But I think even working with the missions pastor to identify those people too within your church of like, hey, I think this is a really great leader, and I think they have a heart for this, and how can we utilize their passion for this and to spur multiplication within our church?
I think too, looking for, I've heard it said like faithful, available, teachable, just like those are the types of people that you want. So it's like, who are the people that are showing up every time? You know, I think we all know these people. But, and then our role is more like coaching the leaders. And so we're trying to ask them questions to help them identify like who would those people or potentially people could be that they could kind of like shoulder tap and say, sometimes you need someone else to encourage you and say like, hey, I see this in you. Even if they're maybe like timid or afraid to like step into something. But sometimes we need to kind of be like, hey, I see this in you. Would you consider, pray about, stepping into this or starting your own group with you know, the network that you're connected to, I'm connected to these people, but who, you're connected with different people, so how can we multiply in that sense?
Good. Okay. And then lastly is collaboration. This is one I'm particularly passionate about. I think we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but this is one that I think just even our World Relief Texas offices in the last year have really been excited to grow in. But basically when you're this is kind of like bringing in the community. When the church and nonprofits work together to do really good work, we want to see the community impacted, the broader community. I think oftentimes churches, at least I feel this in DFW, I don't know if that's the case here, but in DFW it feels like churches are very laser focused on what's happening within the walls of the church or their ministries, their outreach programs. But there's oftentimes a church across the street doing the same thing or trying to accomplish the same mission, the same outreach ministry. They're maybe even serving the same people, but they're doing it very differently. It's, you know, sometimes for us, it's like we see church groups come in and out of refugee communities. But how can we work together and identify who's doing something really well, and let's support that. And then, hey, I have expertise in this area. Let's work together. Let's share volunteers. Let's share resources. Let's have convenings where we're talking about needs that we're seeing in the community and maybe something that's missing, someone that's not sitting at the table. So I think for me, like what gets me excited is when I see pastors in a room, nonprofit leaders in a room, local hospital leaders in the room, local school districts. Like we've been able to expand in that this last year of just the mayor came and got to see our work in Fort Worth. And so I think just experiences like that where people are saying, oh, the church really cares about these people in our community, and how is that spurring on a greater care and greater in our community for our specific cause or issue that we're working on. So any thoughts or any ideas, maybe something you're doing in that area? Yeah.
I just had a question. You keep mentioning refugees.
Yeah.
Do you serve those that are under TPS and parolees, undocumented, that have no avenue to ever become legal? I mean, everyone is coming into your organization?
Yeah. So TPS is temporary protected status. We've had people come through refugee processing in the ways that different policies have changed over the last few years. The last administration, there were a lot of people that were brought in under TPS, and so a lot of those people have become undocumented because that protective status has been stripped. So we've served, our funding specifically only allows us to serve specific populations, but we are expanding. Right now we're really trying to push our more of our private revenue funding so that it can expand, because also our public funding is shrinking substantially. Just because there's less funding for refugees. Like any day now, our refugees that have arrived in the last year to 2 years could lose their SNAP benefits. So just different things that are impacting our work. But right now, I would say we're supporting our mostly refugees and ORR populations. There's these Cuban Haitian entrant status that we're also serving as well. That's the majority of our clients.
Do you find there's pushback to work with undocumented that have no avenue?
Yeah, and that's something we're navigating too. I think, that's pretty much going to be a reality. Like a lot of people are being stripped of statuses or visas aren't being renewed. And so that's specifically for our Texas offices, that's a new area for us, but we're looking at how can we engage the church in this, or is this something that people would respond to? And that's just attention that we're trying to do. But a lot of what we're trying to do too is education and awareness. I think a lot of people don't understand the difference between refugee, asylee, immigrant, undocumented. And so trying to raise awareness and also just connecting stories of when we think of who an undocumented immigrant is versus seeing like a single mother who's providing for her kids, who's been here for 40 years and was denied a visa that she's always depended on. And how do you wrestle with that as the local church? So yeah, that's a great question.
How are you connected with these
refugees?
How do you find them?
Yeah, so like Alex said, we partner with the government, and so that's been something that's no, you're fine. For about 40 years now, a little bit over 40 years, we've been partnering with the government to do what's called the Refugee Resettlement Program. And so that's all done and coordinated through the U.S. Department of State. And so there's the vetting process that they do, and then we're referred those people, those refugees. So it's
pick them up at the airport. We do their housing, everything for the first 90 days. So like they have case management that walks alongside them as they're adjusting to their life here.
Do you have an action plan? What happens if someone gets deported? I mean, do you have to think through, your child's American, I'm not, your husband's not. I mean, you work, that's a big question
for sure.
everyone has.
Yeah, so I would say most of our clients right now are not in fear of that. Mostly, again, the people that we're working with are refugees. And so refugees, after their first year here, can apply for a green card. And so they have a direct path to citizenship versus some of these temporary protected status programs. And so a lot of people that came under parolee status or TPS have moved on from some of our services, or because of the change in the policy, we're unable to serve them because of our funding. And so I think connecting them to legal resources is a huge need. I think that's something we get asked a lot. People will walk into our offices and know that we are help people. And so connecting them to local resources in our community that can help them with legal representation is big. So. Yes?
A broader question, kind of an umbrella question. What led you to the community change ecosystem?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of material out there about ecosystems and change, whether that's in the natural world or social. How did you guys land with this?
Yeah, great question. I was going to talk a little bit about this, but for the sake of wanting to keep it a broad conversation and not specifically talk too much about just kind of World Relief's work, we partnered with Lifeway Research, World Relief did, to understand how are churches and Christians, evangelical Christians, thinking about immigration. And so we've conducted the same survey over several years now to see change. So that's asking, do you think that the U.S. has a responsibility to care for refugees, to welcome refugees? Yes or no? What are your main resources for information and how you think about immigration policy or just immigrants at large? And we've seen that change from media being the number one. The Bible's listed there, and unfortunately, evangelical Christians, even though the right answer is right there, they don't always check the Bible. So trying to do a lot of research on how are Christians thinking about immigration. Is this a biblical issue for them? Is this a political issue? And then trying to work that through narrative change, especially starting with that story and in the teaching part of how are we having this conversation in the church? And then also seeing from research, how are people moving to greater compassion when they're exposed to immigrants in their community. So people are more susceptible to having favorable perspective on immigrants when their church is engaged with immigrant ministry, or they've personally experienced, sat down with an immigrant and had a conversation or shared a meal. So that's kind of what a lot of this research has led to, of this is what community change can look like when we have story, when we have experience, and then tie that into multiplication as well. Yeah. Great questions. Okay, well, we want to make sure that you guys are talking to each other and learning from each other. So we want to take pretty much the rest of this time, maybe in the next 20 minutes or so, to talk specifically in groups. So if you have a list of discussion questions, will you raise your hand? Because I know not everyone got a list of discussion questions. So, is there more?
Raise your hand if you didn't get one.
So basically, if you are sitting near someone that has a list of discussion questions, we want you to group up, maybe max groups of 4 or 5. And we want you to start talking through the community change ecosystem. It doesn't have to be, I need to figure out how my ministry is doing every single one of these, but maybe you're doing one of these really well. Maybe you've seen people come to your ministry through story. Maybe you have a really great idea for how to get people's feet wet in your word. So group up and we'll spend the next 20 or so minutes talking through these questions. Yeah.
Like, just so that they know what they're talking
I didn't want to spend 20 I didn't want to spend 20
But they were asking. Yeah. Okay, so they're gonna do 20 minutes. And then we're gonna do 10 minutes. Just have one person from each group share.
Maybe 5 or 10 minutes, because then we need to share.
So if we start the video.
Okay. 20 minutes would be 30. As long as we're done by 5.
We can maybe see how they are still talking. Because we don't have to take responses.
I'm glad people jumped in to like share.
Yeah, that was a good idea.
Y'all read your questions.
So some of the questions are how does your organization engage people and share your story? What are you inviting people into? What narrative are you trying to change or expand? What's your
Do y'all do work to get people involved in your retail hotels? So how do you?
Earlier at Highland Baptist, early on, we joined the church. It's gather, grow, and there's a real emphasis on growth. I don't know how well they do that. Getting people involved. I personally tried, I did. I think our church, my church is real focused on evangelism. They have about 6, 7 short-term mission trips a year. So when I look at it, it's more like street evangelism. It's not like going and building something or, if I'm not gonna walk up and down here and talk to that's my opinion.
Yeah, well, I just had to ask y'all.
Encourage the young to go on to Mission Waco and volunteer.
Oh, really?
Because that's what your young man I told you about that goes to your church.
Yeah, good.
And volunteers to help me because you're on your own. Morning cooks or the minors, for the minors you get.
It's called the Minor Center.
For the my brothers too. And one man that comes from our church that comes once a week to help me.
The random staff that are
So we definitely
So we create these bags
on the website and
with stuff in there, we also do it. Go around Christmas time.
How about you guys?
What is it, phrase? You know, it's like things that we just take that we all know.
When we do that,
I think this is my first year.
they see.
I think that we have a lot of in terms of how do we
Kind of the experience, like a low risk entry point.
Yes.
Like how to be just like
engage people. And then
Some,
sitting here thinking too, like,
Ben was like the last
already invested, and maybe it's just
one.
like,
So
share
when you're
and the
doing
other
it,
things.
But like I think these ladies, they,
He does thankful Thursday, and he goes to our mission to pass out meals at all the bills.
so I personally, as a first year minister of this church, first year in 4 to 5 months, now I'm entering into a stage of like, okay, I've gotten to kind
We don't make.
I kind of see what the events of all these years looks like.
I guess in my head, I would think of the situation like that. I would ask him how long sure
outside of it. And nothing to do.
we're also not sure. So I don't want to put that on ourselves. I do think our staff has it. I mean, we train people.
I think it's like, it's more of like how we maybe do better work to make sure those people are not being put in a situation where they are traumatized. But I think it's like,
because I think some people are like sitting caution.
well, I think some people, you can see sometimes that some people are being more lighthearted versus other people that you can, like sometimes I see people and they're just making eye contact with me because they're taking it so seriously or they're trying to like wrestle with their own personal issues. I mean, I think even like, I've thought before, like, someone says, or maybe I just thought it, but I thought like, maybe in older settings, like spaz, or like just gone through loss and general grief, and it was really fresh, like that could be really hard to like write down. People that hurt you and have those not that that's, I mean, I think there's certain things that are not necessarily traumatizing, but it's more of like exposing those wounds in those settings. Yeah, I think when we do, I think people, there is an element that it's more to prepare people for the experience, because sometimes it is really like deep for people. And like I remember Abby, Abby and I did a group of students one time, and like which, you know, like we had learned in advance, and they're like, no, I think this is a good approach. Like we said, sometimes you just don't know, like, the type of emotions and all that. But it's good, it's a good thing. But yeah, I don't think most of our to equip people as engaging with, like, oneself.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Video of the room.
I think my church is probably with the young people, the youth and the power. I'm not sure they're great.
Maybe 11:30.
Although I think a lot of it does.
So it's 5 to 10 degrees warmer out there. Thank you.
Hopefully it'll help some airflow.
Yeah, airflow, that's helpful.
They saw it in the, what was
How do you continue to foster social connection? Do you train preparation? Do you require before people begin serving? What maybe resources do you offer specifically for church leaders? Helping people go deeper in their
but during the summer, they were off.
Yeah.
And so they saw the thing, you know, it's done as and so they set up tables with all the goodies. But I know several years ago, they let them pick what they wanted to 20 years ago. And National WU from they just get what I'm preparation for mission trips, and it was a successful guide. They're great. They're great. They really enjoy
get to go to or two tables
Or
and
just get up a mission
what
trip
they
and
want.
they, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, we're gonna do this. It's really a lack of training to equip, they put the size. And we need to be doing that around the mission trip, because you look at the cost, like, I don't know how many people our church would go on the mission trips, but, I'm together to say it's a small percentage. But we need to be doing that with our people in daily life, because they need to be equipped and trained where we are, or otherwise going to the church, we'll find a way to do it. You know, a lot of this is true over the years, it's kind of like whatever's being done for good, and other stuff is just kind of dangling out there on the edge, trying to do what they do and live up to their commitment, and the groups are doing good too. I'm always a whole church. I mean, I feel like letting the whole church know that this is an opportunity.
You gotta get their name.
It's not just for this year,
You gotta get their name, their last name.
I'm not ready to go for lunch.
Say again? So you have your plan?
Your decision, birthday. Oh yeah, do you want to have the class?
I know, see, somebody had, I mean, I didn't know this guy from here, even though they asked me his full name.
I know at our church, we do a weekly,
Well, where does he live? Off the street?
and they also want phone
The
numbers.
guys afterwards being really
And so, like, if you are
big
interested,
questions, almost like he wrote a contract. Yeah, and then he was just like, explain like how your kid raised himself. Like he was trying like feeding me like the good stuff you want out of me. And he was like, how did you come to this conclusion of this thing? And I was like, this whole thing was developed based off of research. And so I'm like, it was almost like, yeah, it was, that was built on that. This is what we basically use for private revenue, like for people to support it.
Okay, about 5 minutes left, and then we're gonna come back together.
So you do feel, and like for something that I would need to follow around town,
I had experienced something like that, which I really, she goes all over the place.
around and
I did learn how to connect people.
with their God.
So when I got that, I realized, oh yeah, if we don't do
The roads are so bad.
that's how we got here.
Try the video.
Maybe not even, because that's
I wonder what the church under the bridge are looking at. I think it's like unique to part of like a
sitting here, hearing their stories, obviously, it's good for when they don't belong here, but it takes a lot of hard, so I think connecting the local church folks to the other side of the world. I was just thinking about the Americans and Mexicans, we tend to get with people that we know, people that are like us, have the same beliefs, and I think it's proper about being
I think, like, I'm like thinking of like an experience too of like, I mean, we have like in Fort Worth, there's like two
So that is a good
trainings, but it's like, what would it be like to like, not there in person, so you wouldn't interrupt, like, not that they've invited, but it's like, what does it look like to like work with really strongly
And that to me is the most important area in church, because if we're not helping those babies and those toddlers develop their worldview in their own way, we sort of now to this is it's gonna be a lot harder than those that are older. And that's why I believe strongly in our social friends. That she takes care of us, and then you go on out to the organizations.
And I would stay here 15 minutes. I didn't have it all. We can volunteer. And she got, I think, was a speech.
And I know there are different things that hold people back, family schedules, a lot of money, like that, but there's still something. We can always pray, and I think it's important, always,
We went past 15, yeah, 25, 30, and then we
also,
go
using that as prayer prompts.
yeah, we need somebody else to
Start
well, for one thing, you've got to stay with the chair. And they don't
All right, we're gonna come back together. Fun to stop and encourage your conversation. Okay, can maybe we get can we get a volunteer? Can we get a volunteer from maybe two groups to just share either a highlight? You can flip to the next slide, Bree. Either a highlight, or is there a strength that one of maybe the churches or groups, organizations identifies that they have, or something that you heard someone say, or maybe something that you're wanting to take back with you? So maybe just one or two people you can speak on an idea that y'all talked about in your group, or just something that y'all were thinking about.
We have the privilege of being with Julius in our group, who is from Liberia, and hearing his story on how God has used him and the different steps here, and how his relationships with so many people have led him, I mean, to a tiny town in eastern Colorado, where I'm from, Colorado. I know the town where he's from, of mainly kind of white people, white farmers, and he's had the privilege to pastor, and there's a lot of immigrant people there because of the type of work that they do, working in the fields and the construction and stuff. But it was fascinating just to hear how God has used him in the aspect of this model that we talked about, and how the relationship factor has been his strong point in what God is doing in his life now. So that was pretty amazing.
So cool.
An area of growth we talked about, or at least me, I work as missions pastor here at First Waco, is the storytelling through social media. So that's very much something where we struggle with, and probably something we need to better identify people in our church who could be ambassadors for that, to say, how can you be a storyteller using your gifts in social media, which goes over most of our heads on stuff. And so even just being intentional about how do you find people who can then help you start at square one, using, new methods that aren't just, we have the sermon on the platform, we have teaching, but how do you even start and say, here, let's just plant the seeds of the story through, I don't know, print and digital media.
That's amazing. I'm sure there's, a lot of different great conversations that were had. So maybe you can, just take this back to your teams, or, this diagram. We also have more here at the end if you want to grab some extras. But, just to continue to sit on those questions. I know there wasn't probably enough time to go through all of them, but hopefully that's helpful and just kind of gives you something to think about or identify, these are strengths and these are areas we could grow in.
Good. We want to end, I know so much of this can feel like processes and just very stiff or, stale sometimes, but I think story is so important, and so we want to share a story of someone who was impacted by hearing story and then being connected kind of through this discipleship process. So hopefully you'll enjoy hearing about Rodney and his story. Oh,
Oh, good.
find my cursor. Okay, well, let's see. There we go.
I would put people in boxes. Always making judgments. But as you get this knowledge, it does blow that box that you had people in apart. You know, I heard immigrant. I was associated with people drunk driving, killing people, stealing. I was listening to talk radio. Talk radio, immigration, bad. You know, keep them out of the country, good. That's all I heard. Even as a Christian, this is what an immigrant is.
People do have concerns about the immigrant community coming into our community. That's an issue we, the church, need to address.
I find that a lot of people are looking at the media and getting all the wrong data about immigrants and refugees coming in. So I do seminars, workshops, sometimes I'll go to a church to try to give them a Christian perspective on immigration.
It was an amazing thing. He just came in and gave real facts.
I think they had gotten all the wrong information about immigrants and refugees and certain parts of the world. So I love to clear a lot of that up so people can kind of correct their misunderstandings of what World Relief is doing and what immigrants that are coming to our city is all about. By, I guess, reminding them of what the basis of what the church is about, and then saying what you really need to do is meet a refugee family.
When David got there, he presented a challenge. And after those 2 classes, I started coming to the coffee house here at World Relief.
One of the purposes of Cafe English was not only to serve and empower the refugees and immigrants, but to provide connecting points for the community. Just come and sit at the table and engage with people, helping them practice their English.
When I came in and I started meeting people, God was so good to show me there's not a single person that stands above anybody else. These are people that have come here to take care of their family, which is like me. I want to take care of my family. This is a real person who's trying to do their best. And so I want to try to do my best for them. I don't know all these languages, but there is a language of laughter. They look at me and they see that I am comfortable with them. They laugh and they relax, and I'm just sitting there just enjoying being with them.
Everybody have a good day.
Rodney, he's a big guy, but his heart is even bigger. As he got introduced to a few relationships through World Relief, he realized, oh, these people are just like me. Those opportunities lead to very rich relationships.
World Relief, they are the ones that showed me how much more I needed to learn. If you think an immigrant is this, then you limit yourself to what God can do in your life. It's about asking questions, trying to understand where they came from, and then loving on them in the process, which eliminates boxes, which eliminates prejudice. If you get rid of those boxes and you trust God to show you the wonder of His world that is inside of each single person, that's where life really is.
Oh, wonderful.
That's great. That's a great story. I think just be encouraged that the people that you're shepherding, that you're discipling, that there's story in the work that we do, and that story can be transformational and can be the journey of, like for Rodney, it was just a faithful volunteer just opening up and sharing about who immigrants are. And so I hope that this leaves you with encouragement, and feel free to stop by and ask us any questions if you have any lingering questions, or if you want to hang out for a little bit. But we're dismissed for, I think, lunches after this, so lunch is on your own.